Okay, so moving on from there, I've started fleshing out the intro of this track. I've added a couple of ambient samples from Splice that I felt added a bit more character and atmosphere. So this first one, it's quite a haunting long string there, which I've added Valhalla reverb to, which extends it further and gives it more depth. The second being this vocal swell, which I again added the reverb to. I also cut my original atmospheric sound on bar 7 to introduce my first vocal sound, to which I've reversed and added another Valhalla reverb effect to. I actually chose a new vocal for my track that I thought suited it a bit more, which is this one. Addiction. You can reverse any sample in Logic just simply by double clicking on it and going to Functions and Reverse. As long as it's a audio file, can't do that with a MIDI track. Then what I do is bounce that out and I would reintroduce it into the project, and I would undo what I've done here because otherwise you have two versions of the same reverse. As you can see here, I've taken a few sections of the kick sequence out to match the drop sections in the reference track. For example, this one, and then we have one here, just small sections, and then a larger one here where I actually introduce the main vocal sample. Addiction. Again, matching the actual reference track. We know the reference track arrangement works well in this genre, so I'm sticking to it closely, but it's not actually dictating my creative decisions. Skipping back to bar 21 here, I've started increasing the momentum of the track by introducing the next hi-hat loop, again with a half-second pause in the kick sequence to keep things interesting and signify a new element coming in. So it goes from there. This transition is again followed by another techno effects stab sound. From bar 25, I add a clap on every other beat, as heard in the reference track. From listening to the reference track, I could hear the clap was actually quite subtle in the mix. This meaning its presence is still heard, but the huge kick sound is still the main character of this movie. You can do this simply by reducing the track's volume. There's no effects on the hi-hat loops there, I'm just adding a compressor. And that clap sound is just a sample that's gone into the sampler there. And what I've done there is just take the low end out using the EQ, and I've added some extra reverb on there. As you can tell, without the reverb it's quite flat, although there is reverb on there. And if I put the reverb on and I just add that reverb there just to give it the same large warehouse sound to match the kick sequence. From bar 31, I include a psytrance style effect sound just before another short drop where I introduce the spoken word vocal of the track I got from a techno vocal sample pack. So you can hear the psytrance sound there, that's just a sample brought into the sampler and some more reverb added. From bar 34, I bring the kick back in and bring in an acid sound to lead into the main transition. I start off gradually with this sound and increase its presence into the build, where I've pitched up my vocal and made two versions of it with slightly different reverb effects on. Addiction. So this lead sound here isn't actually in the reference track, but I've just added it to create some extra spice leading up to the transition. So then on from there, as I say, I've got the actual transition, which sounds like this. Addiction. Addiction. And as you can hear there, I've got the build-up sound, which is this, which is just a sample off of Splice. Then it goes into the actual vocal effects there, which have effects applied to them. Addiction. 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 Then I've got a crash sound here, a riser sound there, and a wind sound here. So that's where I'm up to now in the arrangement. Follow me into part 3 of this arrangement where the track really takes off with the acid lead.